Good morning and welcome to a new week with the electric trucker. This week is going to be exciting because I'm back in my awesome Iveco S E-Way. For those of you who are new here, this truck has a massive 738 kilowatt-hour battery, a rear e-axle with 2 electric motors, and 1,069 horsepower. Today I'm getting loaded at a big tree nursery. Over the past few months, I've transported a lot of plants from garden center to garden center, but for this company, the season is just starting, so I'll be delivering to construction sites instead. This is the tough everyday life of a trucker. But to be honest, I've made myself pretty comfortable here. At this company, they handle the loading, so I don't have to do anything myself. I arrived at 8 a.m., and now it's 2 p.m. and the trailer still isn't full. I can keep an eye on things in the mirror, and the workers in the back are still very busy. At some point, I just thought, what am I supposed to do? Get impatient? Why not just take it easy? I've got my book, it's nice and warm in here, and I'll just wait. When they're done, I'll head out. Simple as that. I'm finally on the highway. Loading took 7 hours, so I only got going at 3:30 p.m. I'm sure they had good reasons for the delay. It's not like they did it for fun, so it's all good. I'll just make the best of it. Now, instead of being limited by driving time, I have to watch my shift time. Since I started my workday at around 7 a.m., I need to stop by 10 p.m. I've got 6 unloading stops, 5 tomorrow and 1 on Wednesday. Plus, I still have to meet up with the Iveco team. Turns out, I don't even need to go all the way to Ulm. They're meeting me halfway. They call it the flying doctor, kind of like Tesla's mobile rangers who can work on vehicles with their laptops. For now, I'm just focused on covering some distance. With this Iveco, I have zero range anxiety. I should reach the rest stop a little after 8 p.m. and there should still be plenty of parking available. I have to be careful not to get overconfident. I'm heading to Knüllwald, right in the middle of the Castle Mountains, with only 10% battery left and an official range of 9 kilometers, or about 5 miles. That's making me a little nervous, but honestly, it's fascinating. Going uphill eats up about 3% battery, but then, on the way down, I regain about 2%. It's amazing how that works. The tricky part is that you can't see the topography on the display, which makes it feel even more unpredictable. But I have no idea what happens when the truck hits 0%. Does it keep rolling for a bit? Does it stop immediately? I don't really want to find out today, so I'm hoping I'll make it. If you know the route and the vehicle, you can definitely push the battery a bit, but you can't make the mistake of losing focus at the end. You have to stay super sharp to not miss an exit. It's not a problem right now, but it happened to me before. I was driving my Renault Zoe, which had a tiny 20 kilowatt-hour battery. We were in Austria, and because of the limited range, I had planned everything super tightly. But then, in the middle of a conversation, I missed my exit. That meant we couldn't reach the charging station, so I had to turn off onto a country road. The car was basically just rolling at that point, and we coasted into some random village. In the end, we had to knock on someone's door and ask for a power outlet. Looking back, it's a hilarious memory, but at the time, as the driver, it was really stressful. That's why, when you're down to the last few percent, you need to be fully focused. No distractions, no deep conversations, no blasting the radio. If you miss an exit at that point, you're in real trouble. Krümelix is exploring the charging park, and we've actually been here before. I parked the trailer down there, so later I can just drive down and park next to it. Last time, I charged at that station in the back, but I had some power fluctuations. I'm probably the only one with these issues, so Ionity won't be sending a service tech just for me. That's why I switched to this charger. I plugged in at 10%, and right now, I'm getting 308 kilowatts of charging power. You might wonder why it's not 350 kilowatts. That's because of the voltage. If we do the math, 308,000 watts divided by the charger's max current of 500 amps, we get 612 volts. As the battery fills up, the voltage increases, which also raises the charging power step by step. That's the opposite of what happens with electric cars, where charging speed slows down as the battery fills up. With trucks, it's an inverted charging curve. The fuller the battery, the higher the charging power. Today was another lucky day. I arrived right at the end of my 4.5-hour driving shift, and now I moved my truck again, just as my shift time ran out. This officially restarts my 9-hour rest period. Since I had to drive on public roads, I wouldn't count that as rest time. It just wouldn't be right. Good thing I parked my trailer in advance because now the place is completely packed. Trucks are parked in the second row, some even in front of others. They know they'll be here for 45 minutes, then have to search for another spot. So, reserving a parking spot really is a game changer. The funny part? They're still letting more trucks in. There's a barrier at the entrance, but they aren't keeping track. They're just letting everyone through. I feel bad for those drivers because they'll probably just have to turn around and drive right back out. A new day begins. My 9-hour rest period is over, the departure check is done, the trailer is hitched up, and now it's time to roll. Today's schedule is pretty packed. I've got 5 delivery stops on my big Nuremberg tour. I still have about 250 kilometers or 155 miles to drive before I get there, but I should be able to find a charging stop along the way. Now, I just need everything to go smoothly. First delivery stop is done, but of course there was a delay. The wheel loader wouldn't go into reverse, so it was unusable. Had to wait half an hour for a small forklift to be arranged. Now I really need to pick up the pace. Time pressure is kicking in. Now I'm in Neumarkt, and the trailer is set up in the parking area behind me. I've been here before, and it worked out perfectly since I needed both a short rest break and a charging stop. This spot was directly on my route, so I didn't have to take a detour. I had considered going to Aral, but that would have added 15 minutes, and the electricity here is cheaper too. Charging took a bit to start, and I almost gave up. The handshake process, where the charging station and truck communicate to set voltage and other parameters, still isn't perfectly optimized for the Iveco. You just have to be patient and try again. Earlier at my second stop, there was an interesting situation. A deep dip in the road that I had to drive into and out of. That was a fun experience. And I had to adjust both the air suspension on the trailer and the truck itself. The Iveco has a support system, so the batteries were never at risk. The trailer just rests on the support. I already scraped it once before, but nothing serious. My break is almost over now. I'll grab a coffee, then hit the road again, and see how much more I can unload today. I just finished my 4th drop-off and got confirmation for the 5th, so if everything goes as planned, I'll finish everything today. Honestly, it's amazing how much easier things get when you just check in and ask if there's anything special to be aware of. I got the tip that I can just stay on the main road and they'll unload me from there. It's these little things, like knowing exactly how to approach a site and then quickly checking Google Maps instead of relying solely on the GPS, that really make life easier. When you handle the digital tools properly, it really helps avoid unnecessary maneuvering or having to reposition. The 4th drop-off site was tight though. I had to maneuver into a narrow spot with plenty of people watching. That's where you really learn how the truck handles. Driving a big rig is all about experience, knowing how the trailer behaves when you turn and how to correct it. Once you get the hang of it, navigating even the tightest spaces becomes easier. It's also super important to know ahead of time when a spot is going to be tight. If you're prepared, it's a lot less stressful. But if you don't know what to expect, it's easy to get nervous. These little tips and tricks make all the difference in the day-to-day life of an electro trucker. The feeling when you know the turn is tight, you have to swing wide, and when you pull it off and the trailer tracks perfectly, it's a small moment of success, but it really adds up throughout the day. It's those little wins that make truck driving fun. Speaking of truck navigation, they're pretty good. TomTom is very up to date, but there are still situations where it might send me somewhere that I didn't know had a restriction, like a no entry sign the system didn't recognize, and you end up having to reverse and maneuver out. There are also times when the route shown is actually passable. I had an instance where the navigation said there was a 12-ton limit, but it wasn't there at all. So there's still some risk involved. You can't blindly trust it. That's why having up-to-date maps is crucial. TomTom was also in the Volvo, but apparently the maps didn't update automatically, so I ended up using my phone's navigation. It's just frustrating if you're using outdated maps. It makes your life unnecessarily difficult. Good tools and good navigation equipment really make the day-to-day trucking experience a lot smoother and less stressful. You can't underestimate how much they help. It worked. I'm at the last delivery point just before 6 p.m. and they're still working hard. Now, I'm waiting for them to unload, I'll help a bit, and then head over to the next drop-off point for tomorrow. There's still some cargo left for the final customer, but after that, the challenge will be completed. As I mentioned, I left East Friesland yesterday around 4 p.m. and today I had 5 drop-offs in Nuremberg under pretty tight time pressure, but everything went smoothly. Honestly, I don't know what else could be difficult with an electric truck. It's been really varied too. Just long-distance hauls or only container transport or sitting in a truck all the time would probably get pretty boring. The mix of long-haul and local deliveries is honestly the best thing you could ask for. Now, I'm here in Harryden, and there's a truck charging park I didn't even know about. It has 2 stations, and since it's not too busy, I'm going to charge up and repark. You can see both chargers are blue because one is having a ghost charging session. But now after 200 kilowatt hours, the charging stopped and the station turned white. I couldn't start a new session, so I called the hotline to restart it, which worked really quickly. But now, when I swipe my card, it only allows me to charge a truck with CHAdeMO because neither of the CCS stations are working. That's a big problem at a truck charging park. At least one of them needs to be functional. Now I have to do a pretty complicated maneuver to turn around, and it's also blocking the second truck from charging. So I'll need to make sure I don't hit the stones. I always seem to get lucky because things like this tend to happen when I'm not in a rush. But if something like this happened, say around noon, it would have really annoyed me. When more electric trucks are on the road, it's going to be an interesting situation. I don't think the perfect charging station that always works exists, so we just need a lot more charging points. 2 are okay for now, but I hope that in the coming years, there will be a lot more. Once the network for truck charging is expanded, it won't be such a big deal anymore. And on the plus side, it's never too bad at truck stations because there are usually car charging stations up front. That should be a good backup for the next few years. Yesterday I talked about the charging station, and now the Alpatronic field service is already here. So they're on top of it and can at least see online that there are issues or that the station isn't working anymore. I've got a delivery stop now, which is just around the corner. Afterwards I'll clean the trailer, then head back to the rest area here, where I'll meet up with the Iveco doctor so he can take care of the connectivity and software update. Then, I'll probably do something on the side, like go jogging or take the dog for a walk, and then we'll see what dispatch has for me next. I'm done with the customer. The trailer is completely empty and clean, and now I'm topping off the battery. The Iveco technician is already here, and he said he can do the initial checks while the truck is charging. Then it needs to restart a few times. Funny enough, a Tesla has gone astray and is charging at the truck chargers, but it's no big deal. But the charger is working again. It seems to have recovered overnight. We're done with the Iveco upgrade, and I'm sitting here with the Iveco service technician, the flying doctor, who took care of everything. I now have the opportunity to take a behind-the-scenes look, as there's a technician mode where you can log in with a different PIN. It's fascinating. You can read everything and see a lot of shortcuts, many of which I don't understand. For example, you can see the battery packs, the current voltage, and that they all have the same voltage since they're connected in parallel. This means, in the end, they all contribute to the final voltage needed for charging. You can also see the current temperature and the total energy throughput in kilowatt hours. This throughput shows both the energy going in and out, which can be cross-checked with the kilometers driven. The health status is also visible, and since everything is new, it's at 100% capacity, meaning everything is optimal. At the bottom, you can see that it's only possible to charge up to 90%, which I can't change. That's the difference between gross and net capacity. The user interface, of course, shows a higher value, about 96%. So there's that small discrepancy. But I find it really fascinating to see just how much high-tech the Iveco is and all the things you can adjust. I charged a few more percent, and I've got company from the company roll. They have a Volvo FH Electric, and they were just telling me that they're currently testing it. It's on a 2-month lease, but the experience so far has been really positive. It's currently replacing a diesel truck, and if everything goes well over the next few months, they'll replace it permanently. They've also already ordered a second Volvo Electric. However, he mentioned that the energy consumption is a lot higher because of the heavy-duty machines they are transporting, which are not aerodynamic at all. He mentioned that 140 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers is typical, which is 30 to 40% higher than what I'm experiencing. It's clear that aerodynamics is everything when it comes to trucks, and they could definitely make some improvements, like using a tarp whenever possible for better efficiency. Good morning. I stayed here last night, and today I'll be picking up cargo for 2 unloading points around Hamburg. So today it's just a cross-country drive through Germany, and I'll unload first thing tomorrow morning. I could have even charged here because there's a charging station up top. There are charging stations at every truck stop now. There's rarely a place without one. It's so nice driving down the Kassel Mountains. I haven't had to brake once on this whole trip. I've just regained everything. I'm on my way north now, loaded with 8 tons on 20 pallets. In half an hour, my driving time will be over, so I need to take a break, even though I still have enough range. I'm heading to Knüllwald again, because it's ideally located just before Kassel. The Iveco software update I received actually has a nice interface change. Now I finally have a daily odometer which never worked properly before. Now I can see that I've driven 262 kilometers or 162 miles today, and my total energy consumption at 257 kilowatt hours. I also see the consumption is 1.0 kilowatt hours per kilometer or 1.6 per mile, which I find pretty efficient for such a big truck, even though the load is light. There are even diagrams you can display. The Castle Mountains go up and down, and right now I'm recovering a lot of energy as we go downhill. Good news and bad news. Let's start with the bad first. The charging station isn't providing the full charging power, it's only charging at around 210 kilowatts. But the good news is, with the current consumption, I can go 600 kilometers, and after charging an additional 180 kilowatt hours, I now have nearly 800 kilometers or 500 miles of range. If the battery is big enough, 350 kilowatts is actually more than enough. 200 kilowatts would even suffice. While you wouldn't have a buffer, you won't be driving more than 800 kilometers a day anyway, as the driving and rest times in the EU limits it. Of course, it's a whole different situation in many other countries from which you are watching this. But for me, here in Germany, it works. I'm making good progress, and I'm driving a bit slower on this stretch because I've always wanted to find out how economical the Iveco can be. I've just passed through the Castle Mountains, and we're now at 0.9 kilowatt hours per kilometer, which means it's just as economical as the Volvo with the mini cabin. Of course, it's tempting to drive fast and accelerate quickly, but the argument from other manufacturers has always been that a manual transmission can optimally match the electric motor, resulting in lower consumption. But I think that's not true. The simplicity of a single-speed transmission does require a correspondingly large electric motor to handle acceleration well across all RPM ranges, and the side effect is a lot of power. But when you keep it at a steady 80, it's super efficient. Which is why I think that in the future, many trucks that are still over-engineered and have manual transmissions with multiple gears will disappear. It didn't work out for passenger cars, so why would it for trucks? Because with the money a gearbox costs, you could just make the electric motor bigger. And the effect is that you get more power and better recuperation. I've arrived and am looking for a nice parking spot, since I've already found the charging stations. There are 4 Ionity chargers here, again at a fuel and rest stop where expansion isn't allowed. I'm trying to make my way over there and hope there's no height restriction. Well, it works. Luckily no one's here at the moment, so it's really perfect. It felt a bit like driving through a labyrinth because I parked the trailer over there, but it's not exactly in an optimal spot. By 6 p.m., you can already see trucks parked in the car spaces. They are just parking everywhere, so it's really stressful, but I managed to navigate around and finally got here. From 6 p.m. onwards, it gets really tight at the highway rest areas where the parking spots are free. At the truck stops, it takes about 4 hours longer until everything is full. That's why they're already parked in the second row, and all the other trucks are parked behind them. I'm actually in one of the lanes now, but it's wide enough, and there was already another truck parked ahead of me. I left a bit of space in front so I could maneuver in nicely. I'd say the trip was a success. The consumption with the Iveco was 0.89 kilowatt hours per kilometer or 1.4 per mile. If you drive it a bit more economically at a maximum of 82 kilometers per hour, it's really efficient. Now I'll take the dog for a walk, and then the day is done. One viewer wrote to me that it's great that I can detach the trailer, but he has an electric truck that's set up as a rigid truck, and you could never maneuver that onto the charging stations. So the recommendation during the transition period is, if you can buy an electric tractor unit, then do it. In case of emergency, you'll be more flexible. Of course, there are certain types of transport where it can't be done any other way, but that modularity is a huge advantage. Sometimes I feel like I'm on a hidden camera show because I was just talking about how 200 kilowatts would theoretically be enough, and now the station is only providing 200 kilowatts. It would be much faster if it was going at full speed, but luckily I'm not in a rush. This happens quite often actually. I only get the full charging power about 50% of the time. It doesn't bother me too much though, because it either happens when I'm not in a hurry, or I have enough time or battery charge that it doesn't restrict me. I need to be at the unloading location at 8 a.m., which is half an hour away from here, so I need to take my rest break by 10:30 p.m. It's only 6:30 p.m. now, so I have more than enough time. First unloading done. I was just at the ramp, moved a few meters forward, the doors were closed, and now it's off to the second unloading location. It's kind of funny because I should be going left toward Hamburg, but there is a height restriction for the underpass. Now I have to loop around the highway. Never had that before. I just finished at the unloading at a Lidl distribution center. I got assigned a ramp and had to unload myself. But figuring out where to go in such a massive building was new to me. I was worried I'd have to unload everything with a pallet jack, but luckily they had electric pallet movers at each ramp. It was pretty fun moving them forward and backward, and you just walk alongside them. And there was a lot of action with a lot of truck drivers. I also had to be careful while rolling up to the ramp, as I had to disengage the hill start assist to avoid any jerky movements. But overall, it was a nice experience. You place all the pallets in front of the gate, and when you head back to the office, they can see via cameras if you've really dropped off the correct number of pallets, and then you get the green light and the papers, and you're ready to go. There are people who only go from ramp to ramp, from warehouse to warehouse, which I think would be boring for me, but every now and then it's refreshing. Now it's Friday, and I've got a return trip that I'll be picking up west of Hamburg. I'm not sure where it's going, but the job is to return to Leer. It's for a concrete plant, so probably heavy cargo. It's a 300-kilometer trip, and I'll pass by a charging station, but cost-wise, I'd like to arrive as empty as possible so I can charge up over the weekend at the depot. With 75% battery left, I should be good. If I do some hypermiling, I should be fine. I'll just take my break at a rest area, just like a classic trucker. The Iveco can easily do 500 kilometers without a recharge, and this way, we can optimize costs for the company. I'm currently at a small rest area, all without a charging session. I just grabbed a coffee inside and validated my parking ticket. Then, the card reader didn't work because I usually pay via smartphone, but the lady at the counter said I could keep the coffee and wished me a nice weekend. Normally, I would go back to the truck and get some cash, but sometimes it's just nice to say thank you and enjoy the moment, especially since the lady was so happy to give something. And with my free coffee, I'm ready to tackle the rest of the day. I arrived with 9% battery without needing to recharge. You can see the screen of this Siemens charging station currently charging the truck at 263 kilowatts. We have a stationary storage system here with 1.6 megawatt hours and also solar panels, but neither is in operation yet. That's why we don't have any special load management software in use yet, since we plan to combine everything eventually. As of now, to avoid power spikes, the whole infrastructure is limited to 500 kilowatts. Even though we could charge at 3 megawatts, we've capped it because there aren't many trucks yet. And now on Friday, all the trucks return and the entire yard is full. One problem I've noticed is that we have the classic DC charging stations from Siemens, just like the Alpatronic, with charging ports on both the left and right. But only the Volvos use the right connector, and all the other trucks that are arriving charge on the left. If you think about it, only one truck can charge at each station, but we will have to see and find a solution for it. The week is done, and with that, I wish you all a wonderful Sunday. We'll see each other again next week.